Hello and welcome to the Principal Investigator video demonstration for how to certify a time and effort report. Today we're going to go over a brief summary of the eForm updates for this reporting cycle. We're going to talk about how to certify a time and effort report. We're also going to talk about responsibilities, where you can find additional resources, and who to contact if you have any questions. So based on feedback that we received from our first time and effort reporting cycle, we've made quite a few changes in this next reporting cycle. The first change we made is we updated the workflow or the approval order of the eForms. In the first reporting cycle, the eForm routed began with the employee, then went to the supervisor of the employee, and then the last approver were the PIs of any of the applicable projects. Based on feedback we received from all parties, we have changed the approval order to where now the employee will still be the first approver, and then the form will go directly to the PIs so that they can review the sponsored project or grant project portion. And then once they've reviewed and approved that portion, it will then finish with the supervisors. Another change we've made is you can now view workflow prior to approving the form. So if you have any questions or want to know who's seen the form or who's going to be approving the form after you, you can actually see that information before you approve the form. Another feature we have added is you can use the View a Grant Report option to see not only forms that you've already taken action on, but also forms that are pending action. We've also updated the certification language to include "to the best of my knowledge and belief." And now PIs will only have the ability to toggle funding lines where they are listed as the PI. Of course, unless they are also listed as the supervisor for that employee, then they would have the ability to see and touch all the distribution lines. And we'll show you what we mean in just a few minutes. Just as before, who should expect a time and effort report? A time and effort report will automatically be generated for any employee where a portion of their salary is either directly charged to a sponsored project or used as cost share on a sponsored project. The reports will be released for certification by your college or department's business manager, just like they were previously. And once the business manager releases the time and effort reports, they will first go to the employee for them to review and certify, unless that employee is no longer active. If that employee has left the university, it will skip that employee approval and go straight to the PI. So just kind of keep that in mind. So you will receive the following email notification once a report has been submitted to you or routed to you for certification. It will look exactly like this example. It will say action required. It will list the employee's name, their primary department, based on HCM, the reporting period for the time and effort report, and it will also have the specific eForm number associated with that employee. It'll contain a link for you to access the report directly. The one thing that we like to ask is that as soon as you receive these notifications, to go ahead and take action. We want to have certification complete within 30 days of their release. And when we say certification, we mean all approvals completed. So that's including the employee, all the PIs, and the supervisor. So of course, we can't do that if they get held up in one person's queue for an extended period of time. So please, as soon as you receive these notifications, please make sure you're taking action on them. The other option is once you receive that email notification, you can either click on the link within the email, or you can log directly into HCM PeopleSoft using the link below and just navigate to My Workplace, select the Grant Time and Effort tile, and then select Certify a Grant Report to access through any pending reports in your queue. So now we're going to go right into HCM and demonstrate how to do this. So here is HCM, and of course it always defaults to the employee self-service page, and you would begin by selecting the drop-down menu and selecting My Workplace, and then the Grant Time and Effort tile. And then you should have two options over on the left-hand side. You can either view a grant report, and as we mentioned before, using this option, you can now access both pending reports and reports you've already approved. And that's reports from this cycle and previous reporting cycles. But to certify a grant report, you will need to select Certify a Grant Report, and then you have a variety of ways that you can pull up those reports. You can enter in the exact form ID to pull up the report. You can search by their name, or in this case, we always recommend just doing a wide open search. That way any reports that are in your queue will populate. So we're going to hit search. And in this case, there was only one report in our queue, so it popped up immediately. So it looks like Harry Potter was working on our grants. And it looks like we are the PI on all three of these grants. So we have the ability to toggle all three of these lines. But you'll notice, because we're not listed as the supervisor for Harry Potter, we don't have access to toggle these lines. And we can tell that Harry Potter has already seen this report and he's an active employee because he has already toggled everything to yes, including these lines down here that we don't have access to. So if we scroll down, if we wanted to verify that Harry Potter has already viewed this and we wanted to see, well, who's listed as a supervisor, who else is going to see this report, we could click this View Approval Routing button, and we could open it up and see that, oh, yep, the employee has already approved it. And it's now pending with us as the PI on all three of these grant projects. And then if we wanted to know who his supervisor is currently listed as, who is it going to go to after us? Oh, we can see, oh, the president himself is going to approve this report. I guess Harry Potter is super special, so I would expect the president would want to make sure he keeps tabs on him. But at the top, the grant report still looks very much the same as it did in the first period, as the first reporting cycle. The report begin date and end date, their IMPL ID record would be right here, and we can see all the applicable information. In this instance, Harry Potter was cost shared to these three grants. He wasn't directly charged. If he was, that information would be here. If we wanted to know more details, in addition to just the percent of pay and the total amount, we could click on the details to see, you know, well, what months did he spend? We could click on that information and it would pop up. And we could see, oh, it looks like April, May, and June. This is the time he spent on this project. And so as, you know, the PI, your certification is, you know, to the best of my knowledge and belief, I certify that the employee's payroll percentages reasonably reflect their effort on awards and are consistent with the work performed during the reporting period where I am the principal investigator. So again, this certification is only applicable to the lines where I am listed as the principal investigator. So even if there were additional distribution lines down here where other people were listed as the PI, my certification would only apply to these three. So I know that can be confusing to some people, but we specifically wrote the language to where your certification is only applicable to the projects where you are listed as the PI. So you're only approving these lines. And you only would have the ability to toggle these lines to no or yes, unless you were also listed as a supervisor. And in this case, someone else is listed as supervisor. So as you're reviewing this, again, you know, is this percent of pay or this effort, is that reasonable to the best of your knowledge and belief? If the answer is yes, then you would certify this and approve the report. If the answer is no, of course, you wouldn't do your acknowledgement and you would select the line or lines that were incorrect to no, for example. If he didn't spend 10% of his time on this project and he really only worked on these 2 projects, then you would use this comment box down here to make those notations and let that business manager know, hey, Harry Potter never worked on project 108372. All of this pay needs to be distributed to project 8359 or 9608 or maybe something else. And then that's where using the details button can become helpful, because maybe for all of April and May, he worked on this project, but then in June, he switched to this project. So it can kind of help you give guidance to that business manager and communicate that information as it relates to any corrections you might need. Again, if you're going to recycle a form, you have to put a comment and make sure that that comment is, descriptive enough so that the business manager can take action on it and make the needed corrections to update the form so that then it can be updated and then certified. But for the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to concur that this is a reasonable reflection of how Harry Potter spent his time. And we're going to place our acknowledgement. And then we're going to approve the form. And then we can see we have successfully approved the e-form, and it has now been routed to the next approval step, which is the president himself. And we can verify that by looking at the approval routing, and we can see now that this is listed as approved, and it is now pending with the supervisor. And if you open up the signature action logs, you can also see that the PI has approved and his certification or acknowledgement has been logged. So the next steps, the report will be considered complete once all the applicable PIs have completed their certification, and then the subsequent supervisor. At that point, the report will be fully executed and complete. And again, if a correction is requested at any step of the process and the form is recycled, it will route back to the business manager to make any needed adjustments. So for example, let's say as the PI, you approved everything because it looked reasonable to you, and then it got to the supervisor and some of that university account information wasn't correct. And so they recycled the form back to the business manager to make some adjustments. Well, at that point, the whole workflow would have to start over. So you might see the form more than once if there is a correction for you to confirm information. And again, one thing we do want to note is that if the employee and the PI are the same person, so for example, you received your own effort report, and obviously you're working on several projects where you're listed as the PI, the approval at the PI step will be automatic. So you're not going to have to log in as the employee and then log in as the PI and, approve the same report multiple times. It'll be automatic. So PI responsibilities, again, make sure that you review the salary charge to ensure that the percentage is reasonable of how they spent their time on the awards where you're listed as the principal investigator. And make sure that the effort reported is consistent with anything that you may have submitted to sponsors elsewhere, such as progress reports. And just remember, as the PI, you are overall responsible for all the expenses associated with that grant award. And so, any inaccuracies could result in punitive actions, as noted in federal and university policies. So just make sure that, everything looks good and is reasonable. And again, if you ever have questions or concerns, coordinate and reach out to your business manager. So where can you find additional resources? You can always go to the Office of the Controller's website under Grants and Funds Management, Webinars and Training. There's all kinds of great resources located here. If you wanted to look at the payroll information yourself associated with your specific projects, you could access that information. If you wanted more information on uniform guidance and effort reporting, we also have a full webinar out there located on just that topic. So feel free to go out there and look at those resources. And again, if you have questions, please contact your business manager, and you can also email gfmecert@mailbox.sc.edu. Thank you.